Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome back again to the NPTEL online certification course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. In our last lecture, we have seen a case study of the application of quantitative research method. We'll continue the same module. Today we'll be discussing another case study, another paper, and we'll try to see how authors have used the quantitative methods to complete the study and then wrote the paper which was published in a journal. So without any further delay, let us focus on today's presentation. This is lecture number 41, Quantitative Research Case Study 2. So in this particular lecture, what we are going to learn, we'll see another application, different quantitative research technique that what we have discussed in the previous lecture, previous case study. It is little different from that, and then we'll try to summarize our understanding and also we'll discuss the take away, some important points out of this case study. So if you look at this particular case study, this is a paper which is titled as Measuring Impacts of Delhi Meerut Expressway on Land Cover and Land Use. Again, this is one paper which is related to the planning domain, and where it is some attempt by which we try to measure the impacts of a newly constructed expressway. So we don't know about this particular expressway or not, so I just brief about it. This is something like earlier, like whenever we have to travel from Meerut to Delhi, as because now Delhi is already saturated and there are too much of congestion already there with the existing population and the setup. But over time it has been observed that even not only restricted to the New Delhi, but its surrounding, which also covered like the NCR, National Capital Region of India. So from surrounding also people are coming to Delhi for different activity, mostly for the job, but apart from the job and all, there are other few activities also, that people for getting a good healthcare facility, or maybe for some kind of shopping activity, or maybe depending on some certain sort of business opportunity, people travel from surrounding like Ghaziabad, Meerut, Modinagar, etc. to Delhi. Now earlier that was made through the highway, but the condition of that road, as because the it is passing through some of the settlement, so it was taking long time, like 2 hours, 2.5 hours time. Now it was realized to make it smooth, make it faster, so there was a need for a expressway, and that's why the Delhi Meerut Expressway was proposed and then constructed, and which like substantially and subsequently reduced the travel time from Meerut to Delhi. Now, once we consider that this is some sort of huge infrastructure, huge investment, but due to this investment, there are certain changes, like depending on this particular expressway, now people can easily go to this particular Delhi, or they can commute between Delhi and Meerut, and there are different exit point at different important nodes. But it also impacted in certain other areas as well, like definitely those areas which were earlier not having that much of development. Because of this connectivity, there are certain sort of growth that happened, that more settlement coming up into those areas along the expressway. Then there are other few development, like some commercial establishment they are coming up. As a consequence, definitely whenever we see the positive aspect of all this infrastructure, there are certain sort of changes in the land pattern. So the attempt in this particular paper was to, you know, get the impact over time. Obviously it is something that is measuring temporal changes of land use and land cover due to this particular construction of Delhi Meerut Expressway. The authors are Ayush Keshri, Aditya Manish Pitale, and I also, joined in this particular, co-authorship. So again, it is a paper which was submitted initially for a conference, and finally it came out as a book chapter in recent trends and in transportation infrastructure. The full citation is given. So if you are interested to read about this article, you can always search by this particular name, or maybe you can also use the DOI or the URL given over here. And also for easy access, I have given the QR code of this particular paper. So who are interested can easily get into this particular article. Now if I talk about the background of this particular research, some of them already have mentioned that new road construction has an impact on the population and land use characteristics, especially for undeveloped area. Whenever we connect two dots, say for example there are two villages, very small villages, they have certain expansion, after that there is no such growth, okay, it's very limited. This village A and this village B, they have certain sort of potential, some business potential, but they cannot scale it up because they don't have some resources which B has. Similarly, B requires certain sort of resources which they don't have, but they can get it from A. Now it's something like connecting the dots. If you connect these two areas, so they will be mutually benefited, and that's way like we connect all those locations and regions. So the moment you connect these two area or to land, to settlements, not only they will get the benefit from each other, along that particular connectivity will observe slowly people will start settling over there. So settlement will grow, and eventually after some years, if it continuously grow like this, so it will merge and it will become a bigger area. So this is something like definitely which will make change in the land use. Land use is something that when I'm talking about the planning aspect, the land use is the there are two type of land use that we can talk about. One is which we use in the spatial analysis, land use land cover, where we just consider about the built up, non built up, green area, water bodies, etc. The other land use that we normally use for all this master plan or any zonal plan, that is the intended land use. That what is the use of that land within the built up. Built up is something where you have some building component, right? And non built up is if you remove the built up area from a particular region, whatever is the subtraction, so that is your non built. Now when we talk about built up area and within which we try to find out the land use, so in that case it's the purpose, the intent, that okay, this is used for residential, this is used for commercial, or this is used for say institutional building. So that is another. So in this particular study, land use is mostly at the built up and non built up thing, because it is a long corridor. At this particular time it was little difficult, and that was also not the purpose of this study, to go for individual land use specific change to be observed or measured. Now that is something like whenever there is some sort of connectivity, we expect that there will be some kind of growth in population, new settlement will come. It may start with a very few commercial establishment, and gradually we will see that it is developing like an independent one. Introduction of a new road system can hugely change the land use characteristics in peripheral areas, right? The immediate impact will be just along the road that you must have observed when you are traveling by say any car or any vehicle through highway. So you'll find that most of the cases when it is passes through a village area, you can see all these kind of agriculture field, but in between you will see some kind of pop up of some sort of commercial activity. Maybe it can be a dhaba, it can be a banquet hall, it can be just like some fun area. But gradually, what I also observed in many places, that gradually people start also settling near the that kind of highway. So not only highways, it is actually happening for all sort of transportation mode. If you have a railway connectivity, if you have a metro connectivity, then you'll see people are trying to locate themselves next to it, because they can move from one place to another place through this particular road or rail or metro. Many studies show that transportation, land use and population all interact in a feedback relationship. So that means it is something that whenever you have certain land and there is no connectivity, so it is limited. Probably the changes are not that phenomenal or substantial over time. But whenever you connect it, maybe some of the residential area, they can see some sort of opportunity to convert into mixed land use, where partly commercial, partly residential, or maybe new area, new industrial area will come. Because of this industry, people will serve that industry, will settle nearby. So like that, gradually it will change the overall picture of that area, and it all start with just a connectivity. So transport, land use, integration, those are different topics that even some of you, I'm sure, that working on. This is interesting area, that how they are related, right? Looking at the hierarchy of the roads from a local street, a neighborhood level roads to a expressway, the characteristics of the surrounding land will change. Coming to the gap, so that is something what I mentioned, that infrastructure cannot be seen as a barrier without drawbacks. So whenever we talk everything positive, the reduction in travel time or some sort of better comfort, etc., at the same time there are certain impact on the socio-economic phenomena or also in the natural phenomena. Definitely, in order to construct the road, you need to cut down some of the trees, but always we are making a trade off. It is not that we are destroying the nature. At the same time, we go for planting more trees along the corridor, which not only increase the green area, but it can also act as a noise barrier. This can also act as some sort of a barrier to air pollution, because trees with dense canopy, they really help in some in terms of noise barrier, or maybe in terms of like pollution barrier, etc. Now come to objective of the study. In this particular study, the objective was to show the changes in the built up vegetation cover and water related features along the expressway corridor. So in this case, from Mirror to Nijamuddin Bridge, this is the long corridor, and there are certain important points that we have taken as some sort of point of interest, or just like to detail out the changes. So in this case, you can see that the whole corridor, how it developed with the phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3, they are showing with the red, blue, light blue and the dark blue color in this particular slide. Here we have used some sort of special map, and we also use the Google Earth Pro images in some cases. Now coming to the methodology, in this case basically it is something that first assessment is through the observation. So we have just done some sort of observation survey, some recognition survey to see that okay, yes, there are certain sort of growth happening. Some buildings, some factories, they are under construction during that phase. This was done during like 2021, that particular phase, 21, 22, and we observed that there are new construction happening. Then we thought that okay, let us use the history or the time lapse function available in Google Earth. So there you can change the timeline, so you can see that what was the scenario, say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and all. And we have seen in many places that there was nothing before implementing. So we could easily identify that okay, once this road started coming into reality, that time there are new things are also coming side by side. So then that helped us to think that okay, there are certain changes, and let us use some special tool, some kind of calculation on some indicators that I'll discuss in the next few slides, to measure that particular change in the land use. Then it requires data collection, mostly secondary data collection, but that are validated through primary survey, through observation survey, visiting all important points that we have considered in the study, and then finally the spatial analysis using the data. Now for this, when we say about the type of data, we discussed in detail during a particular presentation dedicated to the type of data. So in that case, it is definitely some sort of secondary data which we collected from the Landsat data, and the window of the data collection, the map that we have taken from May 2013 to March 2022. So remember that May 2023, that time there was no such kind of existence. Yes, proposal was there, is the initiation stage. Then also we have used the cloud free Landsat only remote sensing imageries for those kind of spatial analysis. Also, like we have selected 6 locations, as I already mentioned in that particular map, because it's a long corridor, and at the corridor level analysis is very difficult. It requires some sort of computational ability of the system. So we have picked up 6 locations, and how is these 6 locations were picked up? This is based on the observation. So when you cross check that okay, the changes are easily visible, few of the locations we found that there is no significant changes. Earlier it was congested, now also congested, only there are few new houses are coming up. So we have not taken those locations, we have taken those locations where earlier it was like undeveloped, totally like a vacant land, or maybe it is just a demarcated land but no built up, and now things are coming into picture. So we have taken that kind of reasoning to pick up 6 locations, and also a buffer zone of 2 kilometer, 2000 meter. So along the corridor, when we select a particular node, and then we just try to understand that within like 2 kilometer of radius, or you can say in that case the buffer, like you take the offset, that if this is the corridor, then you just take the buffer 2 kilometer either side to see what are the changes. Obviously you may expect that the changes which are very much predominant, that is very next to the expressway, but definitely you cannot accommodate everything close to the expressway. That's why you also have some kind of extended impact in little distance from this particular corridor. Now coming to the survey and data collection part, definitely as I mentioned that in this case visualization on Google Pro to mark the point and build up, that the first step. Then the classification of location as locations with major changes, moderate changes, and minor changes. So these are 3 categories that were defined. Land use classification of selected areas into 7 categories of built up that we have taken. Okay, now these 3, you can say that 3 indices that we have used, like NDBI, which is stand for normalized difference built up index, normalized difference vegetation index, and normalized difference water index. So the first one is to see the change in the built up, second one is for the vegetation, and third one is for the water bodies. Because it's a long corridor, there are components definitely in some places, not everywhere, but some places we also have observed that there are certain kind of changes in the water body. Now, how these indices are calculated? These are all like something based on the remote sensing, and we just use the light spectrum and the band. In this case, we have used the ArcGIS, where we have done this. Now, rationale for this method, definitely use of satellite images precisely determines and change in the built up, because whenever we have surveyed, we can only sense that okay, there is something coming up, probably these are very new construction, but what happened earlier, okay, if you go back, for that we need the temporal data, and which can be very easily captured through the satellite images if we have, and that's why we have used the Landsat images from 2013 to 2022. Landsat images provide accuracy with a pixel size of 30 meter by 30 meter. There are advanced imagery or other techniques, and when it is required we can also go to 10 meter by 10 meter or 5 meter by 5 meter. But at corridor level, we found that okay, based on literature also, this is also a good measurement. Like if you even go with that 30 meter by 30 meter resolution as 1 pixel, that is also acceptable. Now, findings, if you see that there are before after kind of situations. So, this is May 2013 and this is February 2022, and this is about the built up. So, you can see all these 6 points. If you see that from Nijamuddin beach to Meerut, there are other few points, and you can see that how it changes. So, if you just concentrate on the settlement, the built up, that is shown in this orange color. So, in 2013, you cannot see much those colors which are representing the built up, and there is a significant change that you can see in this particular map. So, there is some sort of change in the built up. In other places also there are certain changes, and you can see that this is the line, and then this is nothing but the 2 kilometer buffer both the side of the corridor. But these changes are not that substantial, which is the case in this particular area. Now, there is a reason. Say this site is your Delhi, right? So, next to Delhi, definitely near to that particular city. So, that is why probably which is happening. Even if you travel in this area, you will find this sort of situation. Now, coming to this particular case of water index, there are also certain changes. There is a drop. You can see some of the area, okay, which were having little bit higher sort of water index, which has reduced in this particular part. Similarly, if you go for the vegetation index, the vegetation part is also dropped, but again at this particular scale it was not very precisely measured. Like definitely if you see that some of the areas, like wherever new construction are coming up, automatically there is some drop, but in few areas there are certain sort of new vegetation coming up because it is a planned development of the green things. Now, significant increase in the built up across Delhi and UP border and Ghaziabad. So, that we have seen that if this is the corridor, this area is having maximum of the built up that are coming up. Thus, slowly emerging as a new city outskirt of the Ghaziabad. In recent times, Patrapur, located on the outskirts of Meerut, has huge industrial growth. So these are the observation mainly on that. Now for the vegetation and all, there are changes but not significant changes, as because like it's just too early to measure the complete impact. But yes, even in now, this is the data around 2022. Now if you just again recalculate, probably will see much changes, because in 2 years things have moved faster, because earlier also due to COVID many of the construction were on hold, but now things are better. Now coming to the conclusion of this particular study, how it was reported: Delhi Meerut Expressway and peripheral areas profoundly altered by land use and land cover in some cases, especially near the Ghaziabad area. This is very useful for performing the land use development study for new expressway and corridor, because this is something will give you a future direction how development will take place along the corridor. This study also identifies different pockets of development. It's not that throughout there is a uniform growth. Some potential, either somewhere industry is coming up, and then to like it will expand to a residential area which like people will serve to the industry. This also assists in decision making to frame the implement policy to encourage the development, especially that to have some sort of equitable development along the corridor. If I now talk about the takeaway from this study, which is different from the case study 1, that this is some sort of application of remote sensing data to measure the impact of expressway or land cover. So this is just example of a expressway. You can take anything. Suppose a new industrial area is coming up, a new metro corridor is coming up, a mega project is coming up with a huge area, a township will come up. So then definitely because of that there are certain changes. So you can apply all such kind of indices to measure the impact if you have that temporal data. And also this is something like where we have used the landsat data, and some of the data they are freely available, you can also use it, but as I already mentioned that it has the limitation of 30 meter by 30 meter resolution. If you need in detail like 5 meter by 5 meter, probably in that case you have to procure the data, or you have to find out the source whether it is available. So from secondary sources also you can do this sort of analysis, and which are very common in planning. Some of you might have used this thing, and then taking the buffer analysis. Sometimes we use the land suitability analysis with that. We'll discuss again this kind of spatial analysis in our next module, when we discussed 1 or 2 lectures on spatial method and its application through different case study. So in this case, why we are saying this is a quantifiable thing, because we have calculated those kind of indexes, and then based on that we try to find out certain change in percentage. So definitely the whole paper, if you go through, you'll get some more information, because within this time frame I just could highlight the overall pattern. And if you just notice that case study 1 and case study 2, the pattern, the overall structuring of the PPT, I purposefully keep same, so that the pointer like type of data used. In some cases we'll find the sample size, but in this case it's not like that. Only few important points that we have picked up with certain rationale, and then finally how we analyze the data. So hope this is adding some value to your knowledge, and if you still have certain doubt regarding this, so you can always write in the forum. I'll be happy to answer. So with that I conclude here. So this is basically in this lecture I have shown another application of quantitative research method, where spatial attributes are taken into consideration. So with that I end this lecture here. We'll be meeting with another case study of quantitative research in our next lecture. Till that time, thank you very much for joining the course. We'll meet you soon.